For those of you that maybe are like, okay, what does Kat exactly mean when she says client onboarding? Like, what are we talking about with that? If you Google it, good old Google, Google will tell you the process of welcoming new clients into your business and addressing their questions and concerns, ensuring they understand the services that are available to them. Okay. So basically for like Cat creative talk. Okay, this is how I'm going to word it. It's the process of making your clients feel comfortable, at ease, and really excited about moving forward and working with you. You never want your clients to feel chaotic. Because think about in situations when you're purchasing something. If you feel chaotic, if you feel like, well, wait, I thought they said this, but now I'm getting this. Like you feel like you're getting mixed signals, right? Like dating, you feel like you're getting mixed signals from someone, you're not as likely to trust them or to want to continue to move forward with working with them because you feel confused, you feel dazed and confused about the process. So we want our clients to feel really confident moving forward with us and be incredibly excited. So the chat's going a little crazy, which I love. I'm going to scroll up and read some of the things you guys were saying here. A little unsure, need advice. Bethany, you're in the right spot, girl. And you said you specialize in day of, which I love. So that's awesome. Jordan, it's getting there, but I feel like I could do better. Brooke could be better. Okay. So a lot of like could be better. Emily, what process? Girl, it's okay. Thank you for being honest. I'm not that bad, but I really think I could it's not that bad, but I really think I could get better. Okay. Could be doing better and taking advantage of the tools I have. Okay. I'm giving myself a 4 to 5 because it stresses me out. All right. Nellie, I send a really pretty PDF for my inquiries, use aisle planner, but that's about the extent. I want my brides to feel more special and loved on. Lauren, I love the onboarding process. Hardest is with the restaurants for shooting food. Oh, because they're more corporate. So that makes sense. So that would be a little bit more of a disconnect versus like, someone who is either like business to business, another like service provider, like in the creative industry versus business to business with it being like corporate. We'll have to try to think about that a little bit more later. Jessica, I have a process in my head, but I have to do each process over and over each time. So not in a workflow, 3 out of 5. Okay. Macy, same as Nellie. Okay. Heather, wedding photographer from Atlanta, joining late. Well, hey, Heather, I'm glad you could hang out with us. Okay, awesome. This is super helpful. So like I said before, I feel like a lot of client workflow or client onboarding is workflow. And what used to hold me personally up with my client onboarding was, I think somebody mentioned here, you are constantly redoing it. So you don't really have the workflow part down. So then that means that either maybe every client isn't getting the exact standard that you want because you're literally having to reinvent the wheel every single time versus having a streamlined system in place. Some people hear the word system and you either think, that's going to be a lot of work to create. And who has the time to do that because we're busy and we're trying to like work with our current clients, book new clients. So how do we have time to work on the systems in our business? Okay. Or sometimes we think, well, a system might make it less genuine. A system isn't going to be branded enough for me. And I really want every single client to feel loved on and cared for and appreciated in the process. And while both of those things are very true, I think that you can create a client onboarding system, right? A client onboarding workflow that fits for your business, for your brand, for your ideal client. And it is going to look different for all of us, but that's okay. The point is that you have some sort of workflow to walk through. 2 years ago was when I felt like if someone had asked me about my client onboarding, I would have probably given myself like a 3 out of 10. Like in terms of wedding planning, I felt like it was incredibly chaotic on my end. And I hope that my clients didn't feel that way. But for me personally, I was very overwhelmed with having, over a dozen weddings in the year, wedding planning clients, all at different stages of the wedding planning process, which I know other wedding planners can very much relate to. So you're trying to meet their needs. And even if all 12 of them, like say you only have 12 clients, like all 12 of them are at very different points in the planning process. I also was thinking about bringing on a lead planner, but then thinking about, well, how am I supposed to share my process with her when I don't even like, what is my process, right? Like I didn't feel like I had one to teach somebody. And I was also really struggling because I felt like I was starting to build other revenue streams in my business. So I really needed to organize the one I already had. Because here's the thing, guys. As service-based providers, we constantly hear about like passive income, right? Like, don't you want to make money in your sleep? Like, which that's a whole nother coffee chat we're actually going to do in a couple weeks about like passive income and what that can look like. But the thing that I tell any coaching client that comes my way is before we can really focus on passive income, you have to make sure that you have solid systems in place with the revenue streams that you've already established. Because if you start adding additional revenue streams, yeah, that you might be like, hey, I want to double my income this year. I want to be able to, bring my husband on full time. You have these financial goals for your business. But if you don't have a solid system in place with the revenue streams you already have, when you add more to them, it's going to be a domino effect of everything collapsing. And that's not going to be pretty for anybody. You're going to feel stressed out. Your clients are going to feel like they have no idea what's going on and when things are supposed to be happening. And ultimately, you're not going to be booking at a level that you want to be booking at because you're not going to have that client trust anymore. So that's why I think it's really important to talk about the client onboarding with the clients you already have and the system that you already have in place before you even think about adding an additional revenue stream. The first revenue stream I added was floral design. And so it was helpful that it was dealing with the exact same clients. I was just asking them if they wanted to book me as their florist. So that workflow could stem off of my initial workflow very, very easily because it was a very similar revenue stream in terms of it being the same type of client. But then when I launched a shop and when I started coaching with Creative at Heart, then you've got things that are in all different directions and there was no way that they were similar. So I had to make sure that every single one of them has a very clear-cut system so that I feel really good about it. It's also helped me because now we do have a team. We have a lead planner for wedding planning. I have a virtual assistant, Emily. She's in here. She's amazing. My husband is now full-time. So it helped me to set up current systems so that as I was bringing people on, I had a way to teach them how my business operated. Side note, you will, even if you have one set system in your business for your client onboarding now, that doesn't mean it's going to always be this way. Your business is going to evolve and your business is going to change. And that means that your systems are going to evolve and going to change. Emily and I are actually working now on like a totally different blog workflow. And I've been blogging for almost 5 years. And we're literally like almost like reinventing the wheel on what my blog workflow needs to be because we found a lot of holes. That's obviously not client onboarding. An example I want to give you that we can create a system now, but then you do still need to be able to be flexible. And when you see holes start to form and kinks start to, be put in there, be open and flexible with figuring out like, okay, maybe this aspect isn't working as well as I want. So how can I tweak this and what can I do? So what I want to do, I was just going to walk through my own client onboarding, literally from like the time I get an inquiry, every single step that I take with my clients in hopes that it would be helpful for you guys to hear how I do it and the systems that I use. Now, we're all going to do it different. I know like Nellie and Macy both mentioned like they use Aisle Planner. I also use Aisle Planner. Maybe some of you use 17 Hats or Dubsado or Honey, but other tools like that. We are all going to do something a little bit different and that's okay. The reason that all of those tools exist is because there are so many different types of business owners and personality types that fit that mold. So I don't want you guys to hear what I do and think, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm doing like you're doing it wrong. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just telling you openly what I have found to work the best for my business. And I'm open to hearing what works for you guys and us like all talking about it. So everything I do online. So I do not use a paper calendar. I don't, nothing's on paper. Everything is virtual. So whether it's Google Calendar, Trello, or Aisle Planner, even Google Drive, everything I'm doing, I'm putting online. That was the very first step I made 2 years ago. As much as I loved my simplified planner, I said, you know what, this is not working for my lifestyle anymore. So I knew I had to get rid of that and I had to move everything to be an online, more automated system so that I could access it very easily on the go. I can access it on my phone, I can access it on my laptop, and then other team members could also access the same information. So as soon as I receive an inquiry, I check the calendar, right, to make sure I'm available. So we use Google Calendar, and I have a calendar called DSE Brides in Google Calendar. And I don't know how many of you guys use Google Calendar, if you're familiar with Google Calendar, but it will let you can see multiple calendars all at one time, and you can color code them, which is like speaking my love language right there. So my DSE brides are pink. So I can check and see, do I have a wedding that particular weekend? If I don't, am I free, or do I have too many going on that month and I don't want to take another one? I'm able to just see right then and there what it's looking like. Hannah, my lead planner, her weddings are also in there. She works for my company. She also has her own business. So she has, a variety of things going on as well. But I can look immediately in Google Calendar and see what's going on. If we're available, I send them a canned email, an email that I have already written. It's several paragraphs long with personalized edits in the email to make it like fit whatever she asked about in her inquiry. So I send this canned email basically telling her we are free, which one of us is free. For some brides, I might be booked. So it might be, I'm saying like Hannah's available, that sort of thing. And answering if she asked initial questions or went ahead and told me like fun things about them, like they got engaged at a baseball game or they got engaged hiking, or I don't know, something like that, to make it seem even more personal so it doesn't feel like a canned email. And then in the email, I start to explain a little bit of our process, our package and pricing guide, but I tell them that we actually have a hyperlink. They can click on a link that will take them to our package and pricing guide. Our package and pricing guide is a PDF, so they can then download it from that link. They can look at it right there online, whatever's easier for them. And our package and pricing guide is very extensive. It is not just a one-page guide that gives them the investment piece. We walk them through our entire experience as a wedding planning team. I want them, by the time they get to the investment at like page 11, to have already fallen in love with who we are as a team and the work that we've produced. So they see a lot of different portfolio images throughout the pricing and package guide, as well as just our headshots and like some like cute like little paragraphs about us and just getting to know us. Then we break down, we only offer 2 packages. So we offer a day of execution package and then a design, styling, and day of execution package. So I break down both of those packages, and I give them a lot of information, and this is where every planner is different, and that's okay. But I literally have bullet points. So each package list is about 3 pages because I have like, maybe bullet points on the left side with a picture on the right, like that sort of thing. We've like styled it to look very beautiful and still be easy to read while also giving them a lot of information about exactly what they can expect from either package that they book. We then have a page with a la carte features where we have created about 8 different a la carte packages that they could potentially add on to one of the 2 packages to customize it a little bit more. Since again, we do not offer full service planning. This is actually the first year that we're legit like not offering it. We had 2 full service clients last year. It wasn't in our package guide. We just did it custom for them because they were dream clients and we really wanted to. And this year I said, I'm not offering it at all. But clients that want a little bit more hands-on between our day of execution or our design and styling package, they can add some of those a la carte features in there. So they look through this entire pricing and package guide and they get a really good understanding of what we offer, the price range for each package, and ranges of those a la carte features, as well as more information about our team, and then of course our contact information. I tell them in that initial email that a complimentary consultation is available to every client, and we would love to get that set up. So I say, like, just please, respond, let me know, please shoot me an email back, let me know what days and times work best for you, and we'll get that complimentary consultation scheduled. I handle all that process for whether it's my client or Hannah's client. If it's a client that then Hannah is our lead planner, she's available for, Hannah CC'd. So I say, Hannah will respond and get to know you a little bit more and set up that consultation. And then Hannah takes it away from there because I really want the client to bond with her as their wedding planner, not with me, since that's not fair. Like, I don't want to get to know them selfishly if I'm not working with them. Like, that's no fun. So I want Hannah to like really be able to do that with them. So then they'll respond typically, hopefully, right? They'll respond with the fact that they are interested. Typically in that initial email or that second email, they're telling me which package they're leaning towards. And we go ahead and get their consultation scheduled. I do everything virtually, guys. Remember how I said I moved even from like paper planner to everything's online, even with my consultations. So because we are not specific to one area, I know Jess is in here. Her team is very specific to one area of the state. My team is not. So it would be very taxing, and it would not be cost appropriate for us to do in-person complimentary consultations and drive all over the state. So I want to encourage you now, if you're doing in-person consultations, like initial consultations, and you're driving all over, and even guys, when I say even driving all over, like for me personally, I feel like even driving like 30 minutes down the road to Starbucks, because think about this. How long does it take you to get ready for that Starbucks meeting? Let's be honest, we're female, okay? You got to get ready. You got to block out that, probably 3-hour time period by the time you get ready, you drive into town. You plan to spend time there in Starbucks or in wherever you're meeting with this client. You're driving home. Then you're sending over their contract and their proposal. It takes a lot of time. So for me, I found that it actually fits my clients really well to just do everything virtual. So I tell them that. I say it's all done virtually. I let them know we can do that via like FaceTime or Google Hangout, or we can even chat on the phone. It's really been surprising to me over the last year how more and more of my clients are choosing to do it via phone, because guys, it's actually easier for them. They will literally schedule it when they're driving home from work, or if they're like commuting to and from. Like I have quite a few brides who live in like a larger city, but they're coming back to Virginia because either they went to school in the town that they're getting married, or they grew up there, but maybe they live in Philadelphia or New York. So they are like, sweet, I can call you when I'm on the metro. And that's really helpful for them in their busy lifestyle too. So that's been super, super helpful for us and for my team. It was really helpful for me in the beginning when I was working a full-time job as well, because you have personal time, and you don't want to take personal time for an initial consultation. You want to take personal time for the actual wedding. So try to push things to be virtual. Heather, I see your question. What if they really want to meet in person? I have had like one client in particular, like really, really push that. And because it ended up being like she was coming to my town, like that's why she was like, no, I want to meet in person. I'm literally coming to your town on this weekend. And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to let this one go, and I'm going to meet her at Panera and have that consultation. But if you pitch it in a way that not only it's obviously helpful for you, right? But it's also really helpful for them. So I tell them that. I say, like, you just let me know what night works for you. You can be in your sweatpants, girl, like whatever you need. Like I make it seem very, very casual because it's a very casual conversation about their wedding versus something that's a little bit more formal. Now, if your ideal client, though, is a little bit more of that like formal mindset bride, then you might have to tweak like the structure. But for me, my girls aren't. And so it works really, really well for us. I hope that helps, Heather. We can get into that a little bit more later too. So how would you encourage them to do Skype? I would show, if you really want it to be facial versus just over the phone, I would just don't give phone as an option unless they then bring up like, oh, well, I can't really do Skype or Google Hangout. Could we do it over the phone? And then you would just have to decide based on your company policy, are you okay with that or are you not okay with that? I give an option to do honestly anything virtual that they would like. I say phone or some sort of Google Hangout or FaceTime communication. Typically our initial consultations are done over the phone. Again, that's what I found over the last year. And we can get into other consultations in a little bit. I don't want to get too far ahead of my workflow. So I schedule that complimentary consultation with the bride. I am obviously then putting that in my Google Calendar, and they are then listed as a potential client in my Google Calendar. So I have their wedding weekend blocked off as a potential client in GCal. So if I get any other inquiries in that time frame before the contract is signed and things like that, I'm not double booking myself. I can see very clearly that I have a potential client and I need to figure out that client first before we can figure out additional clients on that weekend. Typically, my client consultations are about 30 minutes long. Sometimes they're a little bit less, sometimes they're a little bit more. It really just depends on the client. I don't actually give them a time limit. And again, that's going to be different for every single planner out there. I've never, knock on wood, had a need to say, this is the time limit. I am able to just say, I'd love to have your complimentary consultation. And then we just talk for as long as we need to talk for. Once their complimentary consultation is scheduled and it's put in my Google Calendar, I then add them to my Trello board. So I have a 2018 Bride Trello board. This is just for me. Okay, so this is like the client onboarding on the back end. Okay, this is not what the client sees, just for me. I add them to my Trello board with their wedding date, and I put potential in all caps in front of their couple name. And so then when I have their initial consultation, because it's virtual, right? If I'm on the phone with them, I can be typing the notes right there in Trello while I'm talking with them. If it is video, and I tell them, like, I'm taking notes, like, while we're talking, and I'm taking notes. And then right after we get off of the phone, I'm transcribing those notes that I took, that I wrote down, into my Trello, so that I have access to them right there. It's virtual. I don't have to figure out, wait, what notebook did I place that in? And I did that in my first year. I just did everything through notes, and it just got very, very complicated with a lot of different clients. So this way I can put everything in Trello, and it's so much easier to be able to keep track of all of that information. So once the client, once we have that initial consultation and their notes are put in Trello, as soon as we get off of the phone, I will then add them to my Aisle Planner account as a lead, send them a contract, send them an invoice, all through Aisle Planner. And this is where everybody's going to continue to be different with the tools that you use. I've been using Aisle Planner now for almost a year. So I'm still a newbie when it comes to Aisle Planner, but I have absolutely loved it in terms of wedding planning. For those of you in here who are not wedding planners, just have some sort of online system. I cannot stress to you enough the importance for yourself of being able to access all of that information, and also the importance for your clients. They feel so much more secure because they can log into what they can very clearly see as a professional system to sign that contract and pay that invoice. It's so much easier than mail for the client, having to print out a contract, sign it, either scan it back or mail it to you. So have some sort of online system. I really can't stress enough the client experience aspect, and then also that workflow aspect. Like I said before, Dubsado, 17 Hats, Honeybook, there are a couple others that I know are great to use. And then I use Aisle Planner. I have used 17 Hats and Honeybook in the past. And I've never used Dubsado, but I've just heard good things about it. So after they get put in Aisle Planner, they receive a contract and an invoice via Aisle Planner. As soon as the contract is signed and the invoice is paid, the retainer is paid, I can then create a project, like literally one click, create a project in Aisle Planner, and I can invite the clients to join in on that project. So for wedding planners, this is where it became a game changer for me, especially with day of coordination. But I'm sure with full planning, it's super helpful as well. And then once I add them as a client onto the project in Aisle Planner, I send them an email in Gmail. It's already a canned email I have written. It's saved in my drafts at all times, that breaks down, this is how to use Aisle Planner. This is what you are required to use in Aisle Planner. And this is what you are not required to use, but there are other really great tools that are provided in this system. Because as a day of coordinator, a lot of wedding planners do not like day of because they feel like it's disorganized and they have no idea what the client wants. So this is how I streamline it. This is how I flat out tell them, these tools in Aisle Planner you have to use. I will not be able to do the best job that I possibly can on your wedding day if you're not using these things. Oh, you want to use some other things? Great. Here's some other tools in Aisle Planner that are super helpful and I would highly suggest using, but you don't have to use them if you don't want to. So that's been huge. Again, we used that for the last half of our wedding season last year. And then we've now been using it for all of our brides for 2018. And it's already been an incredible game changer, just with streamlining that process for myself and for my clients. So I highly, highly recommend it if you guys have been thinking about it. So then after I send them that canned email that talks all about Aisle Planner, I then change my Google Calendar to show that they are a legitimate client, not just potential. So I just literally like delete potential from the calendar. Like from that weekend, like in the calendar. I also then change it in Trello. So instead of potential, it says actual client. And then I have a checklist in Trello that it's a template checklist already saved into that Trello board that is my own on the back end. Again, remember, Trello is not something I share with my clients. It's on the back end. So then I share, I add that checklist to their Trello list so I can keep up with like, when did I schedule the venue visit? When have I done their Q&A? Like things like that. I can just keep up with all of those things and make sure I have all of that scheduled. How's everyone doing? I feel like I know I'm talking a lot because I'm the only one on this coffee chat. I don't have Lauren this time around to talk to. Let me know how you guys are doing. I see a question down here. Pop in any questions you guys might have thus far. Taking lots of notes. Allison. Okay, good. I'm glad you are. Jess, I see your question. Yes, I can definitely talk about that at the end, about why I decided to no longer offer full service, 100%. It was really, I said it, the first time I like said it in public that I was no longer offering full service was in October at a wedding planner conference. And I was like, y'all might all throw books at me, but I don't like full service. I'm only doing day help. And luckily, no one seemed upset. It was just, inquiring minds wanted to know why. So I can definitely talk about that. Any questions so far on this process? Okay. Of course, if I see anything, I will make sure I answer it for you. Another thing, just in terms of my client onboarding, that has been really helpful for me. I do, one thing that was really stressful for me with like, okay, you've onboarded the client. So like now I've sent them, they have their Aisle Planner project. I have created the information in Trello. But what do I, Allison, the planner tool I use, Aisle Planner. If that's what you're talking about, let me know, girl. But my process, my struggle, my main stressor with my client onboarding wasn't necessarily the actual onboarding. It was like, okay, what do you do with them after you've onboarded them? Does anybody else feel that way? Have you ever been like, okay, I can create this system just like Kat said, but now what? Like now I have like all these clients and how do I keep up with everything? And how do I know what's going on? Okay, a lot of all caps yeses. So I'm glad that we're with people who understand how we feel. And so I feel like this is the same no matter what industry you're in. So I know there was some wedding photographers in here, some product-based business owners in here too. I think I do obviously feel very strongly about having a workflow for your client onboarding. So like this workflow is written out. The system that I walk my clients through. So like I could very easily train somebody how to do that, right? It's automated enough and the systems are set up enough where I could very easily, whether I decided that like I wanted Emily to start doing that or Matt to start doing that or somebody else, I could train somebody to walk through that client onboarding process. But then what do you do after that? So something that I struggled with a lot, again, this all started 2 years ago as my business started to grow, was that very thing. How do I balance all of the things? How do I keep up with more brides coming in, but yet I'm starting a shop and we've got the conference? Like you just have too many revenue streams and also a personal life and wanting to not be a workaholic and actually like have a weekend off and not be on your computer at 8 o'clock at night when you're watching The Bachelor. Do it pretty much every Monday night. I'm not even going to lie about it. So something that became really important for me was focusing on, okay, what was the exact package I was offering and how could the package become more streamlined? So it's just a challenge that I want to put out for you guys. And this is where Justice might even help answer some of that question as to why I turned away from full service. My mind, I like logistics. Okay. I like things being in a row. I like to plan it out. I like to see point A to point Z and all of the steps it takes to get there and literally checking them off as I do it. I felt like full service, I was drowning in it, to be totally honest with you guys. I don't necessarily think I was like bad at it. It took so much time to figure out, okay, well, this client, they're actually at like V to Z, but this client's at N to Z, but then I'm starting with B over here. Like it just, my mind didn't like it. And it became not as much fun for me. So selfishly, as a business owner who wants to do work that I love and make my passion profitable, I realized I wasn't passionate about that type of planning. That does not mean that you cannot create a system for that. For those of you guys that love full service and do full service, I think a tool like Aisle Planner could really help you streamline that with all of your clients. So I wanted to, so you absolutely can do that. But if you are, if you're like me and you're really looking for a way to streamline that, look at the actual packages that you're offering. So something that we did last year was I revamped our day of execution package. And I said, how can I streamline this even more? Like, yes, it's already more streamlined than full service, but how can I streamline day of? How can I streamline design? How can I really make sure that I know exactly what I'm getting with each and every client? So for us, something that we started doing is Q&A calls. So every single client who books a day of execution package with us gets 3 Q&A consultations in the package. Those are the consultations that are included with the package. That is what they get with that package. So for me, guys, it was super easy to then be like, okay, rather than saying, well, so-and-so, like they're going to get 5 consultations and they can book them whenever they want, I could streamline it. I could say, well, you get 3 and we'll do 1 within 30 days of booking. We'll do 1 6 months from wedding day, and we'll do 1 between 60 and 90 days from wedding day. So scheduling that became so much easier. So even while the client onboarding workflow was getting smoother, then I could say, okay, now that they've booked, what is their 30-day? Like, when do we need to schedule the first Q&A? Let me go ahead and get that scheduled now, right? And then I could know in my mind, okay, and then in May, we need to do their 6-month Q&A. So I can go ahead and make a note in my Google Calendar that in May, we have to do this so that I don't forget, the client doesn't forget, it gets done. And then what's their 60 to 90 day? Obviously, that is going to change a little bit depending on when the client books, right? If your client books you right now for a May wedding, you're going to shrink that time frame quite a bit for them. But for the most part, my clients were booking at least 9 months out. So that time frame worked really well for us to have those Q&A consultations. Same thing with streamlining that. Those consultations, we're doing them virtually. I try to do those over video if we can, like if it works for the client. I'd love to be able to do that via video, but we're doing it virtual. The only one we do in person is the site visit, is the venue walkthrough, because I do require a walkthrough prior to wedding day. Typically that's at, sometimes it's their 6-month Q&A. Typically it's their 60 to 90 day Q&A. It just depends on the client. So just to put that out there, because I know we were talking about that. But I want to encourage you guys to just look back at your packages and think, how can I make this more streamlined so that once the client books, I can go ahead and put it in my calendar so that I remember. I can go ahead and have this checked off in Trello. I can get those things done to know when the client needs what. The other thing that I started doing to streamline the process even more is I block off one day or one afternoon, really, a month is my client catch up. Now, this doesn't mean this is the only day that I work on client work. I actually try to have one day of the week dedicated to Dear Sweetheart events. So it's like any bridal projects that I'm working on at that particular week. But in terms of catching up, I have one day a week. It's typically in the first week of the month that I know it's on my calendar. This is catch up week. And I can go through my Trello where I have every single bride listed out, and I can say, okay, where was I at with Macy? Okay, this is where I was. So our next step, I'm waiting on her to send me X, Y, and Z. So let me email her and follow up. Okay, where am I with Jessica? Let me look at that and then follow up with her. So I had one day that I knew was my catch-up day to go back through, read through all of my Trello notes and make sure that every client was getting contacted and following up. Because let's face it, I don't know how you guys are, how your brides are, or the majority of your clients are, but for me, I actually find that 9 times out of 10, I'm the one checking back in with the bride. I do get some brides that are much more on top of it, right? And they'll be emailing me like, okay, I just finished this to do, and now I'm ahead of the game and I'm at this to do. But 9 times out of 10, my brides, they hired me for a reason. They need help. They need a day of coordinator. So I needed to know that I had one day of the month that I could go back through and make sure, like, when was the last time I talked to this bride? What was the end of that conversation like? And what am I doing moving forward? And that's been really helpful with just the overall onboarding and making sure that the client's onboarded properly and efficiently, but then is also being walked through steps throughout the entire process and not forgotten about, and then doesn't feel like halfway through the process it's chaotic, even if it was really organized in the beginning. Is that helpful? Let me know your thoughts, Megan. I see your question. Being a wedding photographer, and after I book brides, I always wonder how I can keep in contact with them within the year, almost a year and a half before they actuate. I don't want to seem like I'm bugging them all the time with emails, but I just want to talk with them, give them updated details about their day. Megan, I think that's awesome. I honestly feel like if you had some sort of like monthly day too, where you just block it off and like the first Monday of every month, you just send out emails just to say like, hey, how's it going? Like, or maybe you want to do every other month if you feel like every month is like coming on strong for them. That sounds like dating, like, a little too pushy. I don't know. I think that could be really helpful though, and show you care and you want to hear how things are going, and maybe they need a vendor referral or, something like that. And you want to be very present. And that's a great part of your client experience that I think brides would absolutely appreciate. So I think that could work really well for you. Let me know how you guys feel, and I'll answer some other questions too that are coming up. Oh, Jessica, I saw you asked another one. Let me go back and look. Or no, I'm sorry. It was Jordan, not Jessica. I apologize. Do you have a list of wedding planner conferences you recommend? So Empowered Planners is one I've been to and spoken at before. Lucretia runs it, and she's the sweetest. She's one of our breakout leaders at Creative at Heart this year. That's one that I have been to before, and so I can absolutely vet it in terms of the content that you hear. It is specific to wedding planning, but from the stage, you'll hear like business content from wedding planners, which is really helpful because it's like direct application into your business. I know Ree isn't doing TrueVi anymore, but that was one that I absolutely loved and had been to before. And honestly, Lucretia's Empowered is the only one I can think of off the top of my head that is specific to wedding planning. So if you guys know of any, please pop them in here. I know finding specific wedding planning content can be really difficult. Just scheduled my monthly catch-up day in Google Calendar. Yay, Brooke, I'm so glad. What else, guys? We have like 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes. So I'd love to answer any other questions here, just kind of on the back end. If you guys are interested in like the onboarding part and like how I walk through with my coaching clients, I'm happy to talk about that. But I wanted to make sure I definitely touched on wedding planner since there were so many of you in here. And I know that that's direct application for you. And then even those of you who are wedding photographers and other service-based providers. As they onboard, do you send gifts, welcome packs? Do you send anything throughout the process? Great question, Nellie. So I used to send an onboarding gift. I do not anymore. Instead, I actually send them a gift 14 days before their wedding date. That's the only gifting experience that I have. So I try to make like email communication, which this sounds probably really silly, but I try to make just my overall attentiveness to them a part of the gifting, even though obviously they don't know. I'm not saying like my gift to you is how attentive I'm going to be to you. Like that sounds terrible and super like selfish. But I really try to make the fact that like they know like when I email Kat, I'm going to get a response within 24 hours, probably sooner, like quick response times and things like that. So I stopped doing the client onboarding gift because of Aisle Planner, because what I was sending them was a wedding planner binder that I'd created. But when I purchased Aisle Planner, I felt like, you know what, no way, like this takes the cake. So I actually will even pitch the fact that I use Aisle Planner on my on that initial consultation with them, I talk about IO Planner. I say, oh, and by the way, this is the tool that I use when working with you to plan your wedding. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. And I'm not going to say that that like sells them on, like hopefully they obviously like me, but I'm sure that's a huge check in the like go with Kat box, because they're hearing about this really awesome virtual tool that they have access to complimentary to utilize. And I word it like that. I word that in working with me, they will have access to IO Planner completely complimentary, which again, like all of my brides have loved it. So it's been really awesome. And I know you use it too, so I don't have to preach that to you. So that's why I took away the client onboarding gift, but then I send them something 14 days before. And last year we used a gifting company, like a gifting box company. And I think that's what I'll do this year, because I love that I can work with that person to make sure it's a branded gift. It outsources it, right? I hate going to the post office. I love giving gifts, but it's just a lot on your plate, right? When you're trying to source all of these items and take them to the post office. So we used a gifting company last year, and that was great with Hannah too, because she knew, 14 days out from her brides, like we could go ahead and get those ordered too, versus us, me having to send it for her brides and it just getting a little kooky. So that's what we do, is 14 days out. And then they get a Christmas card from us too. So I hope that helps. Jess, do you use IO Planner for your lead capture form? I haven't started doing this yet. I still use 17 Hats. Just curious if you like it. I do not. I use Show It, which I know we talked about earlier. Show It is my website platform. So I just use their lead capture form. And then after the client responds and says, yes, I want an initial inquiry with you, like I want that complimentary or not initial inquiry, I want the complimentary consultation with you, that's when I add them to IO Planner as a lead. I just prefer to do it that way. I feel like it, I don't like the I feel disorganized when I have too many people being auto-filtered into IO Planner, and it's hard for me to figure it out that way. I like to add them myself if they're going to that point. When I used HoneyBook, I did the same thing. I didn't like that I didn't use the, lead capture form through HoneyBook. I did for a little while, and then my HoneyBook became a hot mess because I wasn't good about going back in and like deleting, like archiving old leads and things. And so I need to be able to go in and manually add my leads. And that is just how my brain works. I see a question down here. Brooke, what made you use Trello over other project management softwares? I started using Trello 3 years ago. I did a coaching session with Caitlin James Photography. I love her so much. And she was like, girl, get on Trello right now. So we literally, that was my homework, like from leaving her session, was transferring my business over to Trello. So that was a big push, right? Because I knew somebody who I trusted who said, you should use this tool. It was free. So that was super big plus for me, because what if I didn't like it? What if my business didn't operate well under it? And so the fact that it is free is great. And my brain works really well with the whole card list system, that the way that Trello is set up, my brain operates that way. I love that it updates in real time. So Emily and I use Trello all the time for her to-dos and our communication back and forth on things. I have it on my phone so I can update things right there. When I'm lying in bed at night and I'm thinking about things like to-dos, I can pull out my Trello and update them. They're right there. When I open my computer, it's been updated. So that's super helpful. I know Asana is another really great one I've heard awesome things about. For me, my system in Trello works really well. So I'm not in the market to like shop for and try out another system, because we've got a system that works. And that's the biggest thing I can preach. I see some I love Trellos in here. I'm glad you guys love it too. The biggest thing I can preach with your system, I lost my train of thought, is if you're like, hey, well, I'm using this one system, I don't use IO Planner, or I'm not using Trello, I'm using Asana and 17 Hats or whatever it might be. If your system is working and you don't feel disorganized, you don't feel like your clients feel disorganized, girl, you do you, and you keep using the system that works for you. It's if you feel like there's somewhere along the way that it's broken, that's when you can try, some other platform. So that's why I picked Trello, Brooke. Yes, I love that you guys all love Trello. Maybe we'll do a coffee chat on Trello at some point. Jess, I saw one more question for you. Does Aisle Planner invoicing talk to QuickBooks? Yes and no. So I use a bookkeeper as well, and like she has my login information in Aisle Planner. It like goes into my bank account, so she can see when a retainer or when a final payment has gone into my bank account, log into Aisle Planner and see which client that was. It doesn't integrate quite as well, at least from what I remember with when I was using 17 Hats or with Honeybook. But for me, it's just the fact that I could do everything in one system versus you could potentially invoice and do contracts via 17 Hats and then, move the client over to Aisle Planner. You could absolutely do that. I just liked that I could do everything in one system. And if you're not using Aisle Planner, Jess, we should totally talk about that, because I know like the amount of weddings you do and with your team, girl, I don't know how you're doing without Aisle Planner. So I think you should absolutely look at it. Heather, for Trello, do you use Aisle Planner or Trello for tracking client to-dos? Trello is just for me. So my clients do not see that. So I use the notes section in Aisle Planner is where I type notes from our consultations, and the client like homework, like client to-dos, I'm putting them in the notes section of Aisle Planner. But then I have on the back end in Trello, like my own like thoughts of like, Kat, don't forget to do this for this client. Don't forget to do this. So I use both, just one's on the front end and one's on the back end. Let me read that again, Heather. Send clients by. So in Aisle Planner, you can't like mandate a due date. Like I can just type like by March 1st, do blah, 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 just like you could in like a Google document. Whereas in Trello, you can officially like put a due date that will then remind you when it's coming up to be due. If that makes sense. So I do that for myself in Trello of like, okay, I want to have the layout done for this bride by Friday at noon. I want to have, things like that in Trello on my end. I cannot give due dates to my clients, but see, I'm not doing full service planning. And even with day of, I don't micromanage them to that extent. I give them referrals, I give them to-dos and like next steps, but I'm not checking in terms of like, it's March 1st, this was supposed to be done 2 weeks ago, how is it going? Like that kind of micromanaging, if that makes sense. Brooke, do you send your client a welcome guide that outlines how we're going to work together? No, that's a great question. So when once the client has signed their contract and invoice and Aisle Planner, I add them to the Aisle Planner project, and then they get an email that breaks down Aisle Planner. So they basically just know via Aisle Planner, like this is how the process is going to be and how we're going to communicate with Kat and work with Kat along the way. So I do not have a like PDF that outlines that. Heather, I have to micromanage myself or I forget a task. Absolutely. And that's where Trello is great to micromanage yourself, because you can add due dates and color code and checklists and whatever you need in Trello, like on the back end for you. But your client wouldn't see that unless you shared it with them.